embrace it, make the most of it, because it's fantastic. People don't have this kind of environment on the doorstep.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner, Sharon Sutton.
Welcome to this week's edition of Island Influencers, and my guest this week is Andy Cooper. Andy is originally from the northeast of England and moved here to the Isle of Man from the northeast, having been a general brand manager for Whitbread. Sometime later, he's found himself in the role as General Secretary of the Manx National Farmers Union, which may seem a strange step, but do listen to his story and you'll hear all about how this impassioned individual is making a real change, a positive change for difference with the farming and agricultural community in the Isle of Man. Thanks for listening to Island Influencers. Thank you so much. You're the sort of person that I've asked in the past, what challenges do you see for the Isle of Man? You usually list them and then you come up with loads of opportunities without even actually being asked, well, what can we do about it? Well, we do this. So it's great to finally get you on. But to kick off our conversation, I'd like to go back in time, if that's okay, and just ask you, tell us your story, where you're from, where you grew up.
Where am I from? I'm from the northeast of England, a small town called Thornton by the sea, which is fairly close to a place called Middlesbrough, which most people have heard of, or a place called Whitby, which is probably slightly more famous because that's where Dracula's from, or where he landed.
Okay.
It's a long story, but if you've been there, you will find out all about Dracula. I
haven't. Right. Okay. So
you should go. Yeah.
Yeah, should I? Okay. Thank you. So what happened there?
I grew up in the northeast, and all my family is from the northeast. And I met my wife in the northeast, and she just happened to be from the Isle of Man.
Yeah. Were you at college at that point?
No, I'd finished college. I was at working for the Whitbread pub company in a Durham pub just under the cathedral, halfway between the cathedral and the castle. And she was running the pub opposite.
She was running the pub? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So her background, of course, she was at uni in Huddersfield. She did English literature as a degree.
Yeah.
And she became an editor for Granada Television. And then when we switched over from analog to digital, we didn't need anywhere near as many editors, and she somehow fell into retail license management as well.
Oh gosh.
And that was how we met.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you went to college, what did you study at college?
Business, but I did it through Whitbread. So I did my A-levels in Middlesbrough, what was a technical college.
Yes.
And joined Whitbread, what was Whitbread Pub Company in those days, on their pre-graduate training scheme.
Right.
And then I went through their training college because they had their own college and a system set up. And I did, I suppose, effectively their version of Open University.
Oh, okay.
With their associated training providers. And they paid for all of our CPT, all of our extra development, and paid for my MA ultimately.
So you did sort of that part-time study whilst you were working for them as well?
Yes.
Like an apprenticeship?
Effectively, yes. It was a fantastic scheme.
Yeah, sounds it.
But Whitbread, that version of Whitbread stopped existing in the early 2000s. The Mergers and Monopolies Commission came in and said, you've effectively got the market cornered because they owned the company that made the beer, the company that delivered beer, the company that sold the beer. And it was the same all the way through with the hotels, the health clubs, the leisure clubs, the bookstores, everything. They owned it all. So they got told, you've got to pick which area of the business. Yeah.
It's called vertical integration, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So they downsized, much to the delight of the shareholders, because everybody did very well out of it.
Yeah, sure.
Including the employees, as we were, every year's service, we were awarded shares.
Oh, okay.
It was a sharing success scheme. But once all of that stopped, the company took a different direction. The extra development kind of went off with Whitbread, and the pubs went off with a new company.
Yeah, gosh. So what happened next?
I stayed with Whitbread ultimately. I started working before I left college, but effectively full-time once I left college.
Yeah.
That was in 96.
Yeah.
And I travelled the northeast of England working at various different sites, tried out lots of different roles. a stint as an area manager, a stint as a stock auditor, finance auditor, small stint in IT when we were upgrading kill systems.
Bit different now.
Yes.
For listeners' benefit, we just had a bit of trouble connecting to this call, so we were both sort of discussing how being an IT manager as part of our job description would probably have been good to have. Yeah. So were you ever actually a pub landlord like your wife?
Ultimately, for 20 years, my primary role from 1997 really was assistant manager, and then in around 2000 I was general manager. So I took on the license through the courts and the responsibility, and I did that role as a primary role right through until 2016, and everything else was secondary responsibilities depending on where I was based and what I was doing.
Yeah, okay, and that's how you moved over to the Isle of Man eventually.
Yes. I mean, I'd been coming over with a wife for 10 years. We'd always said, we should move. And then when the children were school starting age, we made the decision we will move.
Yeah.
Company of a new version of the company. As after Whitbread, the company was bought out by various different private equities. They were based in the Isle of Man for all of their tax affairs and other reasonings, and they were relocating to the Cayman Islands on paper. But we did have a site in the Isle of Man. I said, would you like to go and run it? It doesn't actually make any money. In fact, it loses quite a lot of money a year. But, it's a disposal site. It could take 6 months to go. It could take 5 years to go. But we'll pay for you to move. And I'd already told them we were moving to the Isle of Man anyway, so I thought, why turn down an opportunity like that for someone to cover all of the relocation costs as well.
Okay, so did you turn that into a success, and is it still open? Can you say?
No, it still got sold. No.
Oh.
It wasn't losing a small amount of money. It was losing a substantial amount of money. And it continued to lose a substantial amount of money. And so eventually it was sold. And I went with the business to the new owners. And it effectively continued to lose a substantial amount of money. And they've since closed. But it wasn't through any fault of the business. It was because the rents in Douglas are so extortionately high.
Right, okay. Do you think things might change going forwards, given that's happening at the moment? I mean, do you think that's likely to change? I mean, can you imagine having to have done that role now?
Current
circumstances.
No, it wouldn't work. There was little or no profit in licensed trades. It is very much like farming, actually. It's small margins, but you work on volume.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, the premises rent before rate was 127,000 a year, which it's an obscene amount of money for any small premises in any town centre in Douglas. And then you look at those with the commercial offices. There's no wonder people are moving their offices out of Douglas into the surrounding areas, because you get a lot more value for your money.
Yeah. I can speak as a business owner who's done the very same thing. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. So you joined the Manx National Farmers Union in 2016 as the CEO, General Secretary role.
Yes, it was interesting. In mid-2016, I knew I wasn't going to be continuing on in my current career path. And I looked around the island. I looked at the local brewery, what their offerings were.
Yeah.
And I looked at some private businesses. I looked at investing in a private business and went to all of the recruitment agencies. I've never actually been really interviewed for a job in my life. I've employed probably over 3,000 people in my career. And the Manx NFU was my first actual real interview for a job.
Wow. That's amazing.
I was working for the one big pub company in England, and I was effectively headhunted by the other big pub company in England.
Yeah.
And that was my career. And the acquisition of the premises in the Isle of Man, the new owners said, we'll take you with us, that's fine. And that was it. That was the interview. Looking for a job, it was actually quite a shock.
A bit daunting.
I went to the recruitment agencies and went through all of the skill sets, and they said, well, why are you actually looking for a job in retail leisure or retail management? And I said, well, that's what I do. That's what I know. And they said, but all of these skills, you could do anything. They're all transferable skills.
Yeah, no, totally.
And I said, okay, well, what's out there? And we went through all of the e-gaming companies and all of the different ones. All of the jobs sounded it didn't quite entice me. It was, it sounds okay, but where's the fulfillment of a satisfaction? I've spent 20 years talking to people as my primary role. I need something which really is all about interaction.
Yeah.
And it was in the Courier, one of the free newspaper. I came through and it's a general secretary for Manx NFU with the job description. I read the job description, still done all of that. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I could do that. And I thought, well, it would be good experience from interview experience, if nothing else. So I put an application. And they offered me the role. And I haven't really looked back. It was...
No, you've been very successful as far as I can see in the role. And I mean, your connection with farming, where is that? Where's that come from?
Ultimately,
I know you live on a farm, but...
We do live on a farm. My wife's parents are farmers.
Okay.
My late father-in-law was a dairy farmer.
Right.
And my mother-in-law lives on the farm next door to ours, just coincidentally.
Yeah.
But my personal experience of farming is none other than my wife having grown up on a farm.
Gosh.
But when we moved to the Isle of Man, the first place we lived was in rented accommodation on a different farm. And then we moved from there into rented accommodation on my mother-in-law's farm. And I thought, this is actually quite fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy the countryside.
Driving a tractor.
Enjoy driving a tractor. I like livestock.
Of course you do.
I said, after spending 20 years of living in strange and weird and wonderful apartments above pubs in city centres, it was the exact opposite of everything I'd ever known. And it was exactly what I wanted, but I didn't know I wanted it because I'd never had it.
No, isn't that great?
20 years of never having a garden, and suddenly...
Yeah. More than you could ever need or want.
Yes, yeah.
Or look after.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I cringe at that, but yes.
Oh, yeah. And you never get days off, do you, from what I can see? No. So you farm up there, sheep?
Yes, I mean, very much we're part-time farmers. So we've got a flock of 100 Manx Lochtons, which are with lambs at foot now. It's only our second year with the sheep.
Oh,
and we've got some commercial Charolais, which they will go off to a different farmer in about 3 months' time from this year's land. And then the rest of the land we currently rent out for seasonal grazing because it's neglected, to polite word. It needs some improvement, the land. But it needs the right kind of improvement because it was previously a dairy farm.
Yes.
However, the last 6 or 7 years, the previous tenant knew he was retiring and perhaps didn't pay quite as much attention as he should have. So we've got quite a lot of fencing to do, quite a lot of ditching to do. It's going to take a few years to...
Yeah, I'd imagine sheep can get quite adventurous and go all sorts of places they shouldn't.
They can, and Lochton's very good at jumping. Yeah,
what about wallabies? Have you had any trouble for those?
Not on the farm. However, I did run one over a few years ago outside the wildlife park, which did cause me a lot of trouble.
Oh, gosh.
But yes, it's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe we should move on from that then.
Okay. It was expensive for the repairs to the car.
Well, personally, my mum last weekend had a pretty near thing. Well, she wrote her car off actually because a wallaby jumped out in front of her on the road between St Jude's and Sandygate, and it went on the roof.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the airbags deployed and it was all fantastic. But what a shock! Those things are sort of, they're running wild and they're rather big creatures to be able to just jump in front of you, and they're no one's responsibility, are they? There's no farmer that's responsible for that. It's just wildlife that...
It's wildlife, and for wallabies, a fair concern. A little bit like the goats, which are a bit of a contentious point as well. But the wallaby, I mean, imagine if it jumped out in front of a motorbike during the racing. I was driving along.
Cyclist.
A cyclist, and I wasn't going particularly fast, probably 60 on the fast section past the wildlife park.
Yes, when there was no speed limits, like over.
Yes. Back when you were allowed to drive more than 40 miles an hour. No, this was a few years ago. And the wallaby, it literally just dived straight onto the front of the car, and it left a massive dent. Cracked the windscreen, lots of damage to the front of the car, and I thought, this has got to be a write-off. But as is always with these things, no, it could be fixed.
Yeah.
It's never quite been right since. So. But yeah, they could do some serious damage. And do you control them as a pest? A lot of them are diseased.
Yeah.
Or do you let them roam free?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, it's not a question I'd want to answer, especially not on here. But no, let's not get into that.
People do have an affinity with the wallabies, and for the most part, they keep themselves to themselves.
Yeah, they keep fluffy.
Yeah. But when does it stop being a wallaby? Does it escape and start being invasive?
Yeah,
someone else can make that decision.
So how has it been for you? You did recently. I mean, the fact that you're not a pub landlord is good for well, I wouldn't want to be one right now, but recent challenges, working from home, homeschooling. You got a few kids there, and
yes, we've got four kids, 3 boys and a girl. It's been a challenge. Katie's done lots of homeschooling and baking and lots of life skills with them during the day whilst I've been working. But as is with all of these kinds of things that happen when you have a national pandemic or a worldwide emergency, you change your routine. I spend more time on the computer in the evening, more time on the phone, and spend more time doing things with the kids during the day. The routine just changes. And I'm quite lucky because it was already flexible working anyway.
Sure.
If the weather's nice, farmers don't like going to meetings. If it's sunny outside, farmers don't like going to meetings. If it's raining during the daytime, farmers don't like going to meetings. So we do tend to have a lot of evening meetings, either in our offices or in the back rooms of pubs, depending on the topic. And keeping that kind of different working hours, which I think is what did put a few people off the job, because it was such varied working hours. But to me, it was fantastic because I would finish work at 5:30 in the morning.
Yes, it's like being a small business owner in that respect. You can please yourself.
Whereas now, the latest I would get in, even from an evening meeting, is 10 o'clock because the fans still got to be up early in the morning. So the hours are great, fantastic.
I know, that's good. So what will you change when you're coming out of this? Will you change anything to that working pattern after?
For me, personally, not a huge amount will change because I would come and go to the office as and when needed, turn up to meetings on farms. But for the farmers and for the board members of Manx NFU, actually, they've embraced technology, things such as Zoom, because they've realised they can come in off the fields, join in for a meeting for half an hour for the relevant section, and then go and get back out and carry on working. If they had to travel to Douglas to a meeting, it was 45 minutes to Douglas by the time we got parked, and we would have to get changed first. And come to a meeting, and then it's the obligatory standing outside gossiping with the other farmers for 20 minutes afterwards, and then drive back to the farm. So suddenly 6 hours is gone of the day.
So it's much more efficient for them. So that's a great outcome, actually, that we can all do this. Great. So I mean, for the benefit of listeners, maybe you could just explain the affiliation of the Manx National Farmers Union to the UK National Farmers Union. Are you affiliated?
We're affiliated in that we share a name and we have the same purpose, and we share some funding sources with the NFU Mutual, which was set up by farmers as an insurance agency for farmers, and the National Farmers Union stemmed from the NFU Mutual. But we are independent in that we don't involve ourselves in any of their political lobbying, because we're completely devolved of the UK in that respect. However, we do share or access some of their resources, and we attend the NFU conference in the UK because we've got to keep abreast of what's going on in UK agriculture and worldwide agriculture, because ultimately all of that has a bigger impact on Manx agriculture than anything the Manx government could do.
Okay. And what about are all Manx farmers? Are they all members of the NFU, the union?
No, we've got a vast majority. I would say 85% of the farmers by production are members. And we cover on the land area over 2/3 of the Isle of Man. But historically, someone's cousin upsets someone else's cousin, they won't be a member. Some people just forget to renew, and some people don't see the union as having value. But that's fairly standard, I suppose, with any union.
Yes, that you've got 85% is great. That's a really good.
We represent the fair majority, so we do know when we're speaking with
sure.
government officials.
So that's your role, isn't it? You're a spokesperson with government.
We're representing the majority of the industry. We're political lobbyists ultimately.
Yeah.
We do a lot of horizon planning, what's out there, what's actually going to be affecting agriculture over the next 5 to 10 years. We start lobbying now for the best outcome for Manx farmers.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult when if the EU currently, or the UK, when it has its new agricultural policy, says, well, we're doing this, the Isle of Man still has to be compliant with the UK to be allowed to trade with them. So we've got to adapt any Manx policy to not only be compliant, but also suitable for the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's conflict, and it doesn't always work. But we're not perfect. As is everybody else. Yeah.
So it's an additional strand that I certainly didn't appreciate. But and I guess the whole Brexit thing is before COVID-19. That was the biggest potential issue for us, and still is. It's still got to be dealt with after.
It does. The biggest fear with Brexit is being caught foul of state aid laws, and some of our government schemes come quite close to breaching those state aid rules or direct support aid rules, such as the way the meat plant is funded.
Yeah.
But as long as we are compliant to receive third country status, we can still trade freely with the UK. And as we can't survive without an export market, we have to be compliant. So everything's got to be scrutinised all the way down, and any schemes we propose to DEF and they propose to us, they've got to be legal. Otherwise, it could end an industry overnight.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. But if we move it on, if you don't mind me asking, and primarily I ask this when I meet people in my role as a financial planner, what's your earliest memory of money?
Wow, earliest memory of money. My granny had a little money box that she used to let me play with when I went to her house. And it was the B-Row man. I don't even remember the B-Row flower man.
I do.
He was wearing a tuxedo. And she had half pennies in it and some old shillings.
Yes,
and
I remember.
Putting them in the money box and taking them out.
Yeah.
I just didn't really understand what it was. I just thought I was rich because I had a box full of money.
Yeah, well, clearly. It's spendable. It's a currency. So gosh, were they decimalized currency, or were they?
It was. I think it was pre-decimal. That was why it's in the money box.
Sure.
I'm sure when I was much younger, I probably used it as a rattle or something. But,
no, I remember the old pennies and the shillings and stuff. It's golly. Well, so how was money growing up? How was the funding situation? From the northeast, it's typically an area where it's quite challenged economically.
There's a lot of Labour voters where I come from.
Yeah,
is that how you describe it?
Yes.
We had mines near us which were closed, and pits and steelworks which were all closed. My father ended up working on the oil rigs in Saudi Arabia, and then in the Sahara Desert in Libya, and all over. And my mother went back to university in the mid-80s, and it was Microsoft IT and design degree. Basically, she became an IT specialist. Kind of come in handy when we were trying to make me.
That's really forward thinking. Who would have known that it would take off in such a way? But
she went to what was Teesside Polytechnic College before it got turned into a university.
Yeah, sure.
And then she ended up working for the NHS for 30 years after that, doing IT and clinical governance IT.
Gosh.
It was. We were never penniless broke, but we certainly weren't wealthy.
Sounds hardworking and pretty entrepreneurial, to be honest.
Being from the northeast, I suppose both parents having a career was quite a good position to be in. Yeah,
but gave you a sense of purpose that you knew that you had to find something to keep you economically active and motivated to do the best you can. Maybe.
When I asked for pocket money, the first response was, well, when you've got a job, we'll start supplementing it with pocket money. When I was 14, I got a job in a local restaurant as a pot wash. And the restaurant wasn't paying me. The chefs were paying me out of their own pocket.
That's an interesting concept.
It was in their best interest to have me do as little work as possible as they were paying me hourly. So it was £1.50 an hour, which was early 90s. It wasn't a bad wage, but they'd wait until all of the pots piled up on the sink until there was a full pile, and then they'd start the timer, start paying me, and wash them off. And then they'd stop the timer. I used to come out after an evening's work with £3, and I was happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know what hard work is.
No.
Yeah. So, Andy, of all the things that you've done throughout your life so far, what things have given you the most fulfillment? I mean, we can go personal and professional, shall we? So personally, what's given you the most fulfillment?
I should probably say things like children and getting married and all of that, but that's a life fulfillment. Yeah. But actually, taking over a farm and the work we're doing to make it our home, the place where we're going to spend the rest of our lives.
That's pretty wonderful.
It's very fulfilling, and you spend all day on a Sunday clearing ditches, and it's horrible work. I would never volunteer to do it, but I actually really enjoy it. And once it's done, that sense of fulfillment afterwards, you think, right, great, that's done. That's one more job done.
Yeah, that's hard work. Gosh.
Yeah, that really is the fulfillment day to day now. That's what drives me. And getting the skill set to do that. I got to do farm visits with our members. And say, what are you doing this week? And we'll go, well, I'm trimming sheep's feet. And I go, oh, that might be an interesting day for me to come and see you.
Learn on the job.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you get so much fulfillment from what you do as a day job. It's not a job, is it?
No, exactly.
You got your flow. You got you're living within what you want to do. Love what you do.
It's actually being interested in it as well, because I didn't know I liked farming, didn't know I liked agriculture, didn't know I liked the environment, didn't know I liked biodiversity. It's all fairly new. Previously, my idea of a great day at work was Saturday night. I don't know, when I was in Manchester, Man United and Man City were playing a home game. This is one of the probably worst but best days, and we got through the whole day with only 12 people arrested outside of the pub, one broken television screen, and 3 fights. And that was great, but we took £40,000 over the bar, so that was a success. That was fulfilling. But actually, really, that's all meaningless now when you put it into perspective. But that's what I worked for at the time.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how your priorities change,
isn't it? Oh, great! That's great. Thanks for sharing that. For any existing or even aspiring business owner or entrepreneur, what would be your number one business tip? I mean, what tips can you give business owners who might be struggling with running their businesses right now and their teams remotely?
This is probably not the most popular tips, but knowing when to stop. Everyone seems to be able to run a remote team. They're very good at Zoom, Facebook, WhatsApp, keeping in contact and keeping it moving. But sometimes actually putting that pressure on for people to do work when actually there isn't anything to do, just saying, right, okay, stop, you take a minute, make the most of this time at home, because the team will appreciate it more when this is all over and we're back at work and somebody says, no, you've got to sign into your 9 hours a day at the computer. Financially, will everybody survive? Probably not. Some people are going to come out of COVID-19 and they don't have a business, but the majority will still be operating. If they've got a profitable, viable business, there will be funding available. The government grants are supporting them to an extent.
Yeah.
So aim at building team loyalty, because if the team's loyal, you can't buy that loyalty. You can only earn it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Thanks. Talking of knowing when to stop, what do you do to relax when you're not digging out ditches?
That is my relaxing.
Yeah, okay. So you never relax.
No, but I do. I find it immensely relaxing.
You find that a good way to balance then?
Yes, balance. Yeah. And as kids get older, they come and join in, and we have actually spent the last winter digging out the garden, because the garden had built up over a number of years to the extent where it was actually, when it rained, the water would run towards the house.
Oh, so, okay. Never a good thing.
No, so we had to dig it out, but that's relaxing because it's building somewhere to relax.
Yeah.
And then as each job's finished, we do have a habit of getting a bottle of wine and taking the barbecue over with the kids and having some burgers and a glass of wine, and that's the reward for doing it. But because it's an activity we do as a family, it is rewarding and it is relaxing.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. So tell me, what do you think are the best things about living in the Isle of Man?
God, I'm going to sound one of those weirdos, isn't it?
No, not really.
It's the countryside.
For those of us who've lived here all our lives, we take it, for granted sometimes. But
people shouldn't take it for granted. Don't realise how good it is. You can finish work in Douglas and be anywhere in the island in 25 minutes, except Bride. That just seems to take forever to get to.
Yeah, it does.
You can be anywhere else in the island in 25 minutes. I still laugh. When I was travelling into Manchester, and it would take an hour just to get from the M62 into the city centre. And people complain because you get to the bottom of Broadway and there's 12 cars in front of them and it's a traffic jam and we're going to be late. Embrace it and make the most of it because it's fantastic. People don't have this kind of environment on the doorstep anywhere else in the world. Or if they do, you get paid dearly for it through house prices and lack of access to infrastructure.
It'd be interesting to see how house prices hold up after this. It could go one of two ways, down or up.
Well, I think the Isle of Man is going to be much more. People can be looking at it much more favourably because I can't think of a better place to be stuck in lockdown.
I can't. No. Yeah, Paul Hotchkiss, who was a guest on Island Influencers a couple of weeks back, he wrote an article expanding on the idea of people havens and how people in the city are all of a sudden re-examining their lives and thinking, my goodness, wouldn't it be great to come and live somewhere in another country? And which is, of course, as close as you can get to being part of the UK, but not.
Yeah, completely.
With all the tax advantages. Anyway, so what would you say are the main challenges the Isle of Man faces?
Challenges as an island nation, or?
Well, from your specific, your perspective in your role, because I guess your specialism is farming, isn't it? And the members, and you know the challenges that they face. So maybe this would be a good time to widen that audience.
From an agricultural perspective, the biggest challenge is routes to market. We've got some fantastic produce on the island,
haven't we?
All of it with fantastic provenance. Some of the highest production standards in the world, which are the British standards, not just the Manx standards. But that route to market, because we produce too much to feed just the home market, but we don't produce enough to tap into any of the big supermarkets or health food chains in the UK.
Yeah, I know. We import all sorts of crap, don't we?
Yeah. So we've got to find a niche market where we can supply the local market at a price that most people can afford to purchase. And you always run the risk of pricing yourself out of the market very quickly. And meat's a great one because we've got some fantastic high quality meat products on the Isle of Man.
Yes.
However, we don't have the processing plants on the island, so we produce a set amount of meat, a large proportion of which is exported, and it goes to the factory that makes ready meals and all of these things which the consumers seem to like from supermarkets, and then it's shipped back to the island as British beef.
This makes no sense.
In a steak pie or a Finder's crispy pancake to be sold in supermarkets. But you look at these big processors, and there's only one or two factories for the whole of Britain. So you can never compete with one scale. And then you've got some fantastic artisanal processors on Ireland, such as Morgan's Pies, who make fantastic pies. All of the ingredients are fresh, all of the ingredients are Manx. But they're all made by hand, and they make a few thousand pies a day. There's these giant machines that the big processors have got to make a few million pies a day. You can't compete on price, and you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And it's finding a balance between those two for the majority of the population to be able to afford to eat Manx. So that's our biggest challenge, is that route to market.
Yeah, sure.
The Creamery have got a great model because
they do.
It's well priced, it's affordable, and people are loyal to Manx milk because we can see the cows in the fields every day.
And especially it's being delivered at the moment when it's being difficult for everybody to get out. I mean, isn't that amazing? You just hope that the loyalty would remain after it just goes to supermarkets again. Who knows?
I think the doorstep delivery loyalty will be retained by the majority of people, because once we've got into the habit of having milk delivered, it's very easy to keep that habit, especially because you can pay by direct debit and you set up an account.
Do you think they can expand their market? They go in the market, doing yogurts and things like that. So.
They could, but they've been there and tried that before. And to do the yogurts, you need to sell a lot to produce it on a commercial scale. So it's chicken and egg situation. If the market was guaranteed, we'd be producing it tomorrow. But I think at the moment they're more concerned about their export cheese business.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's been very successful, hasn't it?
Yeah,
is it still
currently on hold?
Is it? What a shame.
But that's because the export market, there's no one to sell it to.
It's the same with it's the same with the shell. Do you have anything to do with the fishermen? I guess.
Yes, yeah.
I know they've been struggling, haven't they? With
I speak fairly regularly with David Beard, who's a Fish Producers Association chairman, and they've got very similar issues. The markets we would normally sell into are closed, and it's as simple as that. If the markets aren't allowed to trade, so the premium cheese which would be exported to America, Spain, Australia, all around the world from Alderman Creamery, they just said, well, we're not operating. The schools contracts we've got for premium cheese all across the world, again, they're not open. So you can't sell it if it's not going to be sold to.
But so what solutions and opportunities are there? Would you say now, if you were a government minister, what sort of quick wins or longer term wins can you see? I think we spoke once about the Laxey flour mill, didn't we? That's being a perfect example of an out-of-date machinery, but in a beautiful setting. Laxey mill itself is a gorgeous place, and how perhaps that could be changed in some way.
Well, we've been lobbying for the Laxey mill for 2 years because it's Treasury owned. It's run independently by an independent board of directors, but it does receive government support because it can't mill profitably. They had a new chairman of their board start 6 months ago, and we took our lobbying to the Treasury Minister, to the government departments, and to the board, and it was ultimately quite blunt.
It was what? Sorry.
It was quite blunt. Ultimately, we put together a large proposal.
Blunt? No.
Yeah, but it said either spend a lot of money and refurbish the mill where it is and make it modern and efficient, or build a new one somewhere else that's modern and efficient.
And incorporate a bakery?
That's up to them to. We put all of it down as suggestions. But ultimately, what we want is a sustainable flour milling sector on the Isle of Man. Because without the sustainable flour milling sector, we don't have a sustainable milling wheat growing sector.
It works at the moment 1 day a week or something, is that right?
The mill, historically, it used to mill at the start of the week, and then they would spend the rest of the week bagging, distributing, delivering, and then at the start of the next week, they'd mill on a Monday again, and the process would go again. Currently, during this pandemic, we're seeing exponential sales growth, so they're doing fantastically well.
Great.
People are being a lot more loyal to the local products because it's available.
Yeah,
it's available 365 days a year, and it's local.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will give them a bit more weight when it does come to going to Treasury and saying, okay, we're now looking at refurbishing this mill or building a new one. Here's our proposal. Can we have some funding?
Yeah.
And if that level of loyalty stays at the same level of loyalty to the local bread, people have switched to Manx bread. Currently they're sticking to it.
Because they mill for all of them, don't they? They mill for Noah and the other one at Balthane. What's that? Ross Bakery?
Ross Bakery, Noah's, Ramsey Bakery. And they also produce all of the flour that Ramsey Bakery turns into all of the bread for Marks and Spencer's, because that's all produced by Ramsey Bakery.
You wouldn't know it was Manx bread, would you? No.
So it does get used, but the problem is it actually reflects what it costs to grow wheat and turn it into a loaf of bread and sell it, which is why Manx bread is between £1.50 and £2 a loaf. That is the actual cost of producing bread and selling it. The supermarkets do bring in bread from much larger processors, so it's all mechanised, the likes of your Warburtons and whatever else, where you pour the ingredients in at one end and the machine does the entire process and it spits out loads of bread. So their unit cost is far lower and they can afford to sell it cheaper.
Yeah, of course.
But if somebody's on a budget and you're walking around Tesco's and you can save £1 by buying imported bread over buying local bread, it soon adds up.
Yeah,
you can't shame people into buying Manx products, but you've got to accept that some people just can't afford it. Some people can't afford.
Except when there's no choice, and then there's it is what it is. You prioritise, like anything. I guess. And
I think if everybody who could afford to eat Manx products made a commitment to do it, it would drive down the unit cost because the cost of production would reduce and
you'd have
make it more affordable.
Yes, the supply chain would know what they could produce to sell profitably. I mean, you don't want no business exists to make a loss. Otherwise, it goes out of business. It's fairly simple.
Well, actually, that's the interesting one. No business exists to make a loss, but 2 of the 3 agricultural primary processors in Ireland do make a loss. Such as Lexi Glen Farm Mills and Isle of Man Meats, because we have island problems. We have a finite group of people who products could be sold to.
Yes.
Economies of scale, we cannot compete with the large processors in the UK, but you still got to keep those products affordable, and ultimately you need to assure food security. Yeah. So if the boat stopped running tomorrow, we could actually feed the nation. Everybody's diets would need to change. There'd be a lot more red meat, a lot more seafood, but nobody would starve.
Yeah.
But none of them are profitable. Not on a Manx scale.
No, but I mean, there are opportunities, like you say, for niche, and some local producers have already done that. Shellfish producers, the creamery. The
high value niche.
Yeah. So maybe
that's where the profit is. Premium product, which is what we've got. However, it's too frequently sold at a commodity price.
So what would you do?
Sometimes it's for an answer. It's the education behind why we've got these food prices that just seem to be lacking.
I've seen some of the really great pieces that you put out on. You're going to be lacking that agricultural show.
Yes.
Sort of shop front this year, aren't you, to deliver all those messages, such as how much of the Isle of Man's acreage is farmland? It's some incredibly high percentage, isn't it? And
it's 88% of the Isle of Man is farmed or managed by farmers.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. In fact, if you would send me something, I'll put in the show notes access so that listeners can source those if you want anything that.
Yes, I'll send them over.
Yeah, that'd be really great. Okay, well, I was on listening to Radio 4 this morning, and they announced that Prince Charles had said that because there's a real shortage of farm workers in the UK, he's put out a call for a call to action for Pick for Britain, sort of like a modern day VE land army. Do you see anything like that happening here?
We've already had hundreds of offers, people looking for work who do we get in touch with. It's heartbreaking when you have to tell them. We have one commercial vegetable farm on the island.
Yes.
We only grow 10 fields of vegetables on 50 acres. And he employs 10 full-time staff, and that's all he needs. And they need to be looking at the smaller nurseries. We might have a few hours a week picking tomatoes or soft fruits, but we just don't have that kind of agriculture on the Isle of Man.
Do you see more farmers adopting more modern methods, farming under glass and plastic, maybe to extend? You hear about vertical farming, don't you, and soilless farming, hydroponics, that sort of thing.
Over the last 15 years, we've lost probably 25 acres of farming under glass on the island because it's just not profitable on the scale it's done on the Isle of Man. They'd like to, but the investment required to build a new vertical farm or new greenhouse with hydroponics, you're looking in the region of £500,000 to £1 million.
Yeah.
And it produces enough product to supply the entire chain of Tesco's. But if it was being produced on the Isle of Man, it would then need to go on the steam packet, which is £3,000 per wagon to ship it off the island. So all of the profit is lost.
Yeah, sure.
So production of most soft fruits, veggies and salads, it's all gone to the southeast of England.
We had a conversation another time, you and I, about harnessing solar and
yes,
the ability here to be able to take some of that free power generation and employ that back into acreage to make it more profitable. I mean, what expand on that?
If we can make farming more profitable, the farmers can then start focusing on environmental work.
Yeah.
And they're desperate to do it. The Isle of Man, especially the north of the island, has some of the longest sunshine hours out of anywhere in the British Isles.
Oh my goodness. Nobody, you've got a suntan.
Yeah, I forget people can't see me. Yes, I do have a suntan. I spend all day outside on the phone.
Yeah.
The north of the Isle of Man has got some of the longest sunshine hours anywhere in the whole of British Isles, and we have no green energy. We also have some of the longest wind out of anywhere in the British Isles, of the most consistent wind. So you would expect that marginal land out there on the farms, which it's unproductive for growing produce. You wouldn't put green crops in there. You would use it as temporary lay or grazing for sheep or cattle.
Yep.
But what else could you do with that land? You could have a wind turbine. You could have solar panels with sheep grazing underneath it. Yeah. You could turn it over to the environment. You could rewild it, but you need an enabler. And the enabler is to still make money from that land to allow you to do that work. And if the land's not profitable, you can't maintain it.
Well, if it's only not profitable if you lower your costs. If you lower your energy costs, then surely that's a good way. But there was something about, you said something about the planning legislation that meant that you couldn't have solar panels for industrial use. Is that right?
It was really strange rules. So I've got a friend who farms in Kirkmichael, though, in the process of opening a farm shop. They had solar panels fitted on their barn roof, which they connected up to their house, which is perfectly fine. And we said, we want to connect half of them to our farm. Oh, you can't do that. That's not currently allowed under the current planning restrictions.
That's nuts.
So he said, well, can we have a battery and store it into a battery? And he said, you will be able to soon, but currently no. But you could sell it back to the grid, but we'll only give you, I think it was 8 pence per kilowatt unit.
Yeah, I think it's 9 actually, but you charge 17 or something down.
Yeah.
So,
And then when you need it back, we'll charge you double what we gave you for it. It's the rules on green energy infrastructure are just bonkers.
Yeah.
But then
so a review there, if anybody is listening, a review there would be very sensible.
Yes, a review is.
But the land as well. For example, on those bits of land, you could have the Manx Wildlife Trust perhaps bring some conservation projects into where there's solar and sheep and whatever, couldn't you?
Yeah, completely. And their advice will be invaluable to the farmers because we're 20 years behind the green energy movement. The UK has had green energy and there's people grazing livestock under these solar panels and wind turbines profitably. And have done for many years, and as a byproduct, they get money back off the grid for electricity, or they get free electricity for the farm.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple as just putting up a solar panel, because when you change something in the habitat changes. So the farmers will need that expert advice. And I can't think of a better place than the Wildlife Trust really to give it.
No, I mean, we're all part of the same ecosystem, aren't we, here in the Isle of Man, and Isle of Man farming is such a huge part of that community.
If it benefits wildlife and nature and profitability and sustainability of agriculture, it's a win-win all round.
It sounds very very altruistic and actually very possible with a few minor tweaks from what you're saying.
It does, and it was moving full steam ahead with the climate change bill, with the proposed works of Manx Utilities upgrading their infrastructure to enable them to take the extra energy in once people start producing at any scale. However, I do wonder how the island's finances will fare after COVID and whether some of those opportunities will be put on hold.
Yeah, but it seems like a self-healing process almost to me. But
yeah,
I guess we need to sort out our priorities, don't we? It's funny how the Isle of Man, we've been really, I don't know about you, what do you think about how the Isle of Man have coped with the pandemic? How do you think they've handled it?
So far, I think fantastically well, because fair enough, you could have done something slightly differently, but you couldn't have done it that differently, really.
No.
And if we'd had thousands of fatalities and tens of thousands of infections, it would have been, oh, well, it was a disaster. But actually, we haven't.
No,
the number of new infections dropped to single digits daily after the first week because of the lockdown. And everything else that's been put in place by the government has only supported that. So although everybody might not like what's happened, it can't be seen as anything other than a success.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think they've done it really well on this, and it seems to be deserved that we could go forward positively from this and make the most of our opportunities, which from the sounds of it are many and varied.
Something we've been lobbying for already, which we're going to build up on now, is government changing its procurement policies, because keeping Manx pounds on the island moving around in the local economy is worth so much more than purchasing services from off island. We're not talking even the basics such as food. We're looking at the bigger picture. So if you're having an infrastructure project done, such as, I don't know, building a new prom, do you employ a local company where every penny you pay, 30% of that ends up going back into Treasury through tax, national insurance, or through then going into the local economy through the shops? Or do you contract out to an off-island company where every pound you spend on it goes off the island? And that procurement policy should feed all of the way right down to what's on the lunch menu at the junior schools, or what food the detainees at the prison eat. It should all be Manx, even if it costs more. Actually, the returns to the Treasury outweigh the cost. And that's how we will keep the economy afloat and pay off this few £100 million. Is keeping the Manx economy moving. Not sending money off island, but that's going to be a whole shift in the procurement policies right throughout government. And also knowing when to say, all right, we just can't match that. We've got to import it. We've got to bring it in. We don't produce diesel, petrol. There's lots of things the Isle of Man can't produce, and it's knowing when and where to support locally produced and when not to.
Yes, it all comes down to maybe that sensible prioritisation that you said right back at the beginning, really.
It is.
Yeah, no, that sounds really doable and promising. So no, thank you for sharing all that. So what have you got planned next, Andy? When all this is over, I mean.
After COVID.
After COVID, who knows when that'll be? We could be out of lockdown if the Isle of Man eradicates this, which it seems to have almost done now, quite soon. But so what do you see? What have you got next?
Our big working push and lobbying push is having those procurement policies in government change to support local. Start with the basics such as food. Why do school children eat imported bread? Ramsey Bakery could be providing it all. Why do? It's to start with the basics and work our way up right to the bigger picture on the procurement side of it. And then the other main focus is the education piece around climate change. We were expecting to be doing a lot of work at the shows this summer on climate change and climate change litigation. We've done some preliminary work which we haven't peer reviewed at the moment with carbon footprint assessments on Manx farms.
Great. Was there any links to those resources you could share? That would be great. We'd love to publicise them for you.
It depends what the peer reviews come back and say to us. The results we got back, because we were a little concerned, because they came back looking really good. Really healthy, confirming everything we've always believed. That we are better than the UK. We have a smaller greenhouse gas emissions footprint from agriculture than UK farms do. But then we wanted to know why. So now that we know why, we've got more hedgerows. We did all of the analysis last year, had it peer reviewed. We've got more hedgerows per square mile than any other country in the world.
Yes. It's astounding, isn't it? The average size of a field in the Isle of Man is?
It's 5 acres.
And in the UK
it's 25 acres.
And in Australia it is?
It was
4,000.
It was an obscene amount. It was 1,000 times bigger. It was just obscene. And trying to explain that to people, the average field in the Isle of Man is 5 acres and the average field in the UK is 5 times bigger. And the difference that makes the cost of production, but actually the benefits it gives the Isle of Man because of all of those extra hedgerows all the time.
It's not all monetary. It's not, is it? it's responsible farming. Gosh.
This is why we had to devolve from the agricultural policies we've got in the UK, because we're now paying farmers to put back hedgerows, make fields smaller, produce less food. We didn't follow the UK down that road many years ago. We kept what we had because the farmers understood the benefits.
That's so inspiring. It makes you feel great about living here, really.
Yeah, it does. But we've just got to find a new way to enhance what we've already got.
Well, they've got a good man in the chair there helping shape policy. So that's really cool. Well, look, there's a few sort of questions I ask guests, just a quick sort of trivia sort of thing, really, just to sort of finish off. But I mean, are there any books that you've read recently that you'd recommend to listeners, as a source of inspiration?
As a source of inspiration,
or self-development, or philosophy, comfort. I don't know. Just a good read. What have you read lately that you'd recommend? Favorite lockdown book.
Cinderella. Stage 2 learning.
Fantastic.
I've read that every night for the last 2 weeks.
Well done.
Getting a bit sick of it now.
I got my son onto Harry Potter as soon as I could, and that was
my second eldest son Ted has staunchly refused to watch Harry Potter.
No.
Staunchly refused to read Harry Potter. We got the audiobooks, we wouldn't listen to it, and then randomly 3 weeks ago started reading Harry Potter. He's now into book 5. And he walks around during the day reading the books. It's
there's always a time.
Yeah. And he's just hit that age where...
Have you read those?
Oh, yes. I read them.
So have I.
The Harry Potter books, I had a pub in Durham, and next door to the pub was a university bookshop, which sold all of the textbooks, but it's opened at midnight because the Harry Potter film was filmed in Durham as well. So
which one?
The first one, we filmed it in the cloisters at Durham Cathedral. And
yes, of course. Yeah, but they were walking to into the Great Hall.
That film had just come out, and I think it was the 5th book that was being released in book form, and the queues, the pub was packed, people waiting for this bookshop to open at midnight.
Gosh.
And that was when I had to read the first book, because if I could read the book before I see the film.
Yeah.
The pub's full of people buying book number 5.
Yeah. No, you do, absolutely. So apart from Cinderella and Harry Potter, what else have you read?
I'm just looking now on my Kindle, and once I trawl through all of the kids' books, I've got some very strange. So I've been reading the Witcher series, catching up on the book version of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Book 4 of that.
Right.
And I've also got going on...
Are the books good? I never watched the series, so...
the books are far better than the TV series, but you're reading a different story, basically.
Okay.
The TV series was for TV, but yeah. And a little bit of easy listening. Lies, Lies, Lies by Adele Parks.
By who, sorry?
Adele Parks.
Adele Parks, I thought you said Adele. Yeah, okay. I'll look those up. Okay, lovely.
They're on my recent list, anyway.
Yeah, good. I read it, yeah. You read a lot, then.
I switch between reading strange farm journals to real books and switch back. Otherwise, I lose my place. Sometimes confuse the stories, but
I know, hope not. Yeah. What's your favourite quote, Andy?
It's one I say quite a lot now. So it's farming. It's the hardest way to make an easy living.
A good one from one who knows.
Yeah. We've certainly never made any money off it. I don't foresee a time when it's going to make us any real money, but we're doing it for a lifestyle.
You've got to admire. You've got to admire those who rely on it. It's having just got a few plants growing in our garden that a few cauliflower, and just because it's good for your well-being to grow things. It's lovely. I love it, but to have to wait to harvest that to rely to live on the income, it's a whole other world.
2 years ago when we had the drought, I was out doing farm visits, and people would say, come and meet me next to this brick near this field in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So send me the GPS coordinates and go, can you do that on a Nokia? And it's like, never mind, I'll find you. And you sit there and you look at the field and you go, what's in it? And you go, well, this is going to be milling wheat. at this point, I don't think it rained for 12 weeks in 2018. And say, how much did that cost you to put in the ground? And we'll do all of the maths. And 100 acres of milling wheat, that's about £65,000 of land.
And nothing at ground.
And currently it hadn't germinated, it's just sat there, and you go, well, that's the risk, that's the gamble. If it grows, and it did grow, but then everybody ended up with much lower yields because of how little water we got.
Yeah, sure. So there's no irrigation then?
No.
Available?
No, there's no irrigation for most of the island. It's this small section in the north and the south, which are near the trenches.
Yes.
And the northern one, which is where the primary vegetable farms are. The Balaf Curragh is one giant sponge that spends all winter soaking up water, and it slowly trickles out down the Len Trench, so we can irrigate from the Len Trench.
Yes.
But that's the only sort of irrigation, unless someone's got an underground well. Otherwise, you've got to rely on the rain.
Yeah, gosh.
So yeah, it really is. It's
challenging.
You can do everything right, do everything properly, efficiently. They could have rain.
Could have generated some solar power and sold that to the grid.
Well, exactly, which is where
save paying for all that gas.
It's a true farm diversification, green energy. In the UK, it makes up 50% of most farm income streams. Yeah, far more profitable than farming.
Yeah, sounds great. So it sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So where can people go to learn more about you and the work you're doing? Through the National Farmers Union and even the Farmers Benevolent Fund. That's something that you are affiliated to, I think.
That is, yeah. Any chance we get, we'll raise awareness of it. It's the Agricultural Benevolent Trust on the Isle of Man, and we'll divert funding to them wherever possible.
Well, we can put links on that to our the show notes.
The great work they do, the kind of some of the unsung heroes, because something we have noticed, farmers are very good at being isolated. It's second nature to them. However, this time around, it's being isolated and not being able to visit other people, whereas on a normal year, they'll go and lock themselves up on the farm for the 8 weeks of spring and lambing and calving. But they could just go and see someone if they wanted to. But just knowing that they can't, it does make it a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, we were worried what was happening with the lamb price and the beef price, and it was on the news, people pouring millions of litres of milk away in the UK because the markets had disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
And when people are struggling, we do divert it back to Benevolent Trust and say, what can you do to help? What can we do to help?
Yeah.
Can we get them some finances? Can we get them some counselling? It's not talked about in the agricultural community.
No.
I suppose that anything with mental health, it's a dirty word, isn't it?
It is. It's the same throughout humanity. Unfortunately, that's we're all pretty complex beings, and I think if you're not careful, somebody's getting told off there. If you're not careful, the outcome of this is going to be more. I've heard it said more mental health problems than the actual virus. Fear of the virus.
I think it will. The farmers have done a fantastic job keeping everybody else's morale up, and they've embraced this technology, doing video calls. Something,
that's awesome.
Farmers phoning up and saying, I need to get a new phone. It's like, wow, what's wrong with the old one? Well, all this one does is ring people, but apparently I'm going to get added to lots of group chats and group calls. And actually, they've come together really, really well.
Yeah. That's lovely to hear.
They do adapt. It's what we've always done. They adapt to consumer demand and they adapt to changes. They're probably more adaptable than give themselves credit for.
And how can we help farmers be more successful? Is there a list of links or something we can signpost people to buy food for example, anything like that you can?
Well, we're doing a piece of work now with the DEFRA and Manx Food and Drink, which is a part of DEFRA. Yeah. I'll send you a link to those websites and have a list of all of the different places where you can get accredited, approved Manx products from.
Yeah.
All of the farm shops and all of the places which are currently doing deliveries.
Yeah, it's good. I'll share that with the Island Chamber of Commerce as well, because there's lots of resource on there, but to actually find somewhere to go and resource locally produced produce.
What we're trying to do is get it into people's habit that when they're going out now and they call into a farm shop, when things do go back to normal, don't stop doing that.
No.
Because it will be so easy to, when you get your next Tesco slot again, just stop going out and sourcing locally produced. And the only time Tesco's will sell Manx products is if the consumer asks for it. So if they don't want to go to a farm shop, that's fine, but don't go and buy imported from Tesco's. Ask Tesco's for the same products you buy. And once enough people ask them, they will stock it.
Yeah.
It really is that simple. They respond to consumer demands.
Yeah,
they respond very well.
Yeah. So if more people ask, they will stock Manx stuff.
Stock it. Yeah, they will stock it. It's as simple as. And that's the same with any supermarkets. The more people ask for
I know Robinsons are pretty good. They support that
Robinsons do a fantastic, and China Robinsons and the whole Hosthouse family really supporting Manx products, having it on the shelves and having it available. And Robinsons are the biggest supporter by the fact they do import, because there's no disruption to supply, so they support Manx vegetable growers all the way. And when the Manx vegetable grower knows he's we're coming to the end of this season's carrots or potatoes or cabbages, he is always in communication with Robinson, says we've only got enough to last until this date. And
so they know to bring it in.
Yeah, they go into the supply chain, they top up.
I did not know that. That's a really good bit of information to share.
But that's the best way. And
well done, Robinson.
It is well done, Robinson. It's the fact that consumers demand these products all year round, not seasonally. Yeah. But that's what the consumer wants. So they get it and they guarantee the continuance of supply.
Yeah.
And more supermarkets really should think that way.
Yeah.
And commit to supporting local when it's in season, not when it suits them.
Yeah, wise words. Well, listen, thanks so much for letting me talk to you today and help with the project. So I'll let you get on with your Cinderella reading. And wish you a great day. Thanks very much, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.